It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can get a hold of me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you reach out to me through my email, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, if you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon, the Opperman Report Patreon. Everything you hear Monday and Friday, AM/FM radio, you can find over at Patreon with all the ads and the commercials cut out. I just put up there, I just got up there the FBI files on Ivana Trump. They're from the 90s and stuff like that, but surprisingly, there's a lot of content redacted from those files. So check that out. And also to Maria Farmer, our old friend, I had put up the complaint she had filed against the FBI 2 years ago. And just now, she just filed a lawsuit against the FBI. So I have that complaint up there too as well. Plus, all the stuff we put up there, the best of Opperman shows, all the old repeats and stuff like that, plus any new content you get in advance over at the Opperman Report Patreon. Otherwise, you can go to Spreaker.com. We do a live show there every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I play 2 hours of brand new content at Spreaker.com. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when we put up new content. And so I play new repeats every night of the week over there at Spreaker, so you can check that out too as well. Really excited about today's show. It's my first time back in like 30 days after we fixed the studio and the recorder, and we have Matt Janovich. He wrote the book Let the Dead Bury the Dead, and it's about Deborah Jean Palfrey, the original D.C. Madam. Mr. Janovich, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, man, thank you so much for being so patient with me. We booked this a month ago, and I'm finally getting back to you, man, so thank you. Before we get into the book, Let the Dead Bury the Dead, and and Deborah Jean Palfrey, tell us about yourself. Who is Matt Janovich?
I'm mostly a private citizen, but I have done some writing in the past. In 2007, I started writing just a personal blog where I was writing observations about press stories, reporting, and journalism, some analysis. There was a variety of different kinds of writing, but I think around March of 2007, I noticed the D.C. Madam case popping up in the news every once in a while. And I wrote some observations about it. And then about 3 months went by, and I got an email, and it was from Deborah Jean Palfrey. So, yeah, that was pretty shocking. I was perplexed.
So you were like active online commenting about the case, and then she reached out to you.
Yes, I only wrote a couple of just little observation pieces on it, so I wasn't clear what it was that I had written that she found of interest.
Well, after you started talking to her, what was it that attracted her to you?
I think, well, at the time, I basically felt it was that she was definitely an actual madam.
Yeah.
That she wasn't exactly innocent, that there was probably a pretty explosive story there, and probably many stories that were explosive, and indeed there were. One that I didn't want to go down the road with was Shirlington Limo, which I got a very bad feeling about at the time. And that was when there was a lot of renditions going on in the early days of the War on Terror.
Well, I don't know the story about Shirlington Limo. Can you talk about it now, or are you still looking over your shoulder for the limo drivers?
No, I don't think I uncovered anything that explosive, although I still have a lot of primary information, regarding the case.
Yeah, but describe that. I'm not familiar with Shirlington Limo. What's that story?
Shirlington Limo was connected to the Department of Homeland Security. They were a contractor.
Really?
And it was fairly clear from the reporting at the time, I think even in 2006, but it broke about the same time as her story. And it was clear, I think, from the reporting that I thought was pretty solid, that they were a front corporation, a dummy front business, and that they were actually involved in doing renditions of people from the airports around the Beltway.
Wow. Wow, that's terrifying. I landed at those airports. That's terrifying to think of that. Yeah.
But it kind of connected to people who were clients, or possibly pretty good chance they were clients of hers, like Randy Cunningham, for example, and a number of players like that around him. And they were involved even in, I would call it war profiteering in Afghanistan. They're actually providing bottled water to CIA stations. And I remember thinking, why would the water have to be so pure? Why did they have to have some special kind of quality water? And some of these were stations in Afghanistan. Well, we were torturing people in Afghanistan. We were doing waterboarding and all of those kinds of things. And of course, water has, many purposes, but obvious ones. But there was some smoke there. But I got such a bad feeling about it that I just was not going to go down the road with that.
Yeah, nobody wants to take a chance with that kind of stuff. You got to watch your back for the rest of your life. But you believe
that would have been the road.
Yeah, which is the road I'm on, unfortunately. I'm stuck now, though, bro. They just tossed my car just last night. My car. I went in there. The glove compartment's open. All my stuff thrown about. Nothing stolen. I don't know how they got in. I got the key fob. But anyway, I digress. So you believe that Deborah Jean Palfrey was she aware that they were using this limo service and her clients to kidnap her clients, or was this done beyond her knowledge?
I don't think there might have been an incident with a client who was a war on terror suspect, and they may have used her service and Shirlington Limo at the same time. Mm-hmm. But see, I was a researcher for the defense. I'm not an attorney or anything like that. I was taking a paralegal course at the time, as luck would have it. So I was able to be hired by her, which happened a few months after she contacted me. But in general, I think she just really wanted to make me stop writing about the case. So that got to be a really precarious dance, very schizoid.
Okay, so then you think the reason she first reached out to you, not that she was desperate for help, but she was trying to silence you.
Yeah, I think she didn't want me to write about the case. That I was kind of hitting, in a real general sense, I was hitting on some pretty on-the-money stuff.
Well, after you started working for the defense, did you discuss this with her?
No. It was she was quite intolerant. Once you were on board with the defense, you had to toe a line, which I'm not especially good at as a human being.
Yeah. Clients can be very difficult. I hear you, man.
Well, it seems to me if you really want to win a case, you're going to have to just be very frank and talk about what really happened. And I don't know. There was a point where when I was truly hired on to do the research of all these phone records they had subpoenaed from telecoms of her phone. She had a bunch of cell phones that she bought the accounts for, and then the girls used those phones, usually in Beltway hotels.
Right. Now, I have Montgomery Blair Sibley, attached to one of his motions, a bunch of cell phone records, and I have that. And then somebody else sent me another bunch of phone records. But how much more is there that I haven't seen?
Well, there was this event that happened shortly before I started even doing the research for her that she and Sibley called the Thanksgiving Massacre, where they swapped judges on her because Gladys Kessler, a federal district judge, she was not a friend of the CIA and had a history of ruling against them. So the CIA was even subpoenaed. The entire Beltway law enforcement apparatus was subpoenaed. The entire intelligence community was subpoenaed. This was never reported by the press. I know that for a fact. It's a buried part of history in the case. And but they just did judge swapping. All of her peers, basically, they made her resign from the case.
So that the CIA and the intelligence community was subpoenaed by the defense.
Oh yeah, and successfully, but they just dragged out and didn't. They didn't answer. They were actually served papers at the front gate at Langley, and they refused to take them, which they do a lot.
Yeah, I think they have to agree to be... Well, no, not subpoenaed. They have to agree to be sued. But I think to subpoena, you're right, they would have to accept service at least, right? Of course.
Well, they're above the law.
Now, what was the defense theory?
They really are.
What were you hoping to obtain by testimony from the intelligence?
Some smoking guns that they were using her service as kind of a surveillance. What do they call those?
Honey traps.
Oh, yeah, it's a honey trap, but there's another. It's a temporary. I can't remember the name. Sorry. Anyway, it was just like a temporary surveillance thing. But I think they were doing it for over a decade. She was allowed to operate in the Beltway from 93 to 2006, and that only happens if people are looking the other way.
So now, was she cooperating with them knowingly? Was she aware of this mutual beneficial relationship?
That's something I don't know. I don't know if she ever had a handler. It's very likely that she only had just an intuition of it.
Back to the phone records for a second, because one of the things that jumped out to me was the Vatican and the Vatican consulate and Vatican this, Vatican that.
Yeah.
What the hell was going on there, bro?
That was strange, and I have no explanation for it. I mean, I could speculate, but that was odd. There were a number of Manhattan calls. There are some people who have told me they felt that those could be Trump, but there's, as they say, 8 million stories in the naked city.
Oh, well, what would make them connected to Trump? Would it be would anybody do a reverse search on the phone number and to see, phone company records to see who the number belonged to?
Yeah. And in fact, the Rachel Maddow show was interested in that kind of dirt and came and visited me before November 2016. I think they came around in June or July or something. I talked with them for 4 hours. It was funny. It was a Notre Dame student, and Notre Dame is here. She was an alumni, so she kind of was like, "Well, I'll use it to visit the old stomping ground and kill two birds with one stone." I talked a long time. I even showed her some of the phone records. I had to hide things like Social Security numbers and things like that, but yeah. So, but yeah, I'm still in possession of those.
How would there be Social Security numbers associated with the phone records? Was this like actual? I know. Good.
This was a very deep subpoena request. So you saw on a spreadsheet everybody that owned a phone number, the same phone number. It was very detailed.
Yeah, I remember
highly
in the old days when I first started obtaining phone records, I was one of the first guys to be doing that back in the 70s and the 80s. I made a fortune doing it. I know. And if only we had known about identity theft back in those days, I'd be a billionaire. I'd be Elon Musk. But you could get, all you needed was a phone number, and you could get, it would have their name and address. Unlisted number didn't matter, name and address. Sometimes the social would be on there. Sometimes their work address or phone number would be on there. Sometimes their bank account number would be on there. It just depended on what they had to, So if you were getting that's deep. You're right. If you can get that by subpoena, I'm not even aware you could do that.
Yeah, it's just like that. It was. There was some very strange stuff. I found what might have been, and I don't remember his name anymore, but I found what might have been a war on terror suspect in some of them. So, yeah, I mean, she never went along for any of the jobs the girls went on. That would have been logistically impossible anyway. But because she had a lot of them working at once on nights, I assume it was weekends were the big time. And so, her service probably could have been used without her knowledge, but yet she was fairly jaded, cynical enough and such that she might have picked up on it.
So when you say war on terror suspect, this is someone that was actually allegedly involved in terrorism?
Yeah, and he was one of the first ever arrested after 9/11 even.
Oh, really? And this was a client of Palfrey?
Well, he called one of the girls.
Gotcha. What else in the phone records jumps out at you that you want to share with us? Some juicy stuff.
Well, some of them are well known. There was the Ron Roughhead, who was once a defense attaché. He was even in Rwanda when some of the genocide went down, before it, actually. He was an attaché. This guy carried documents around, and God knows what else. He worked for a long time for SAIC, Scientific Applications, and I can't remember the rest offhand. I think they've actually changed their anagram now. But they're one of the biggest tech contractors for the government with surveillance, and you have to have a security clearance that's still operative. It was interesting that Trump canceled the security clearances of a lot of people. Yeah, that'll affect people like that.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. Yeah, I hear you, man. So you think that was good or bad? You think he's for his own benefit or for the national interest? Mr. Trump has our national interest in mind.
I think a little bit of both.
You think so?
Actually, and which is fine. I mean, I didn't vote for him, and he's not exactly would have been my favorite candidate. But there have been some things he's done that I don't have any problem with.
Now, as far as back to Palfrey for a second, if she was in cooperation with these intelligence agencies and local law enforcement, and probably even federal law enforcement, what changed? What happened to get her on opposite ends of the opposing factions?
Well, she messed up. She got lazy and started using what she did in, I guess it was in San Diego, of using the postal money orders to try to launder the money. And so that also involved wire fraud, and she was charged with that. And they had wiretaps of them and the girls, documenting the girls going to various post offices around San Diego and Poway and such. I actually think Randy Cunningham and some people that were around her, these contractors, these war profiteers, were probably acquainted with her during that period, and that would have been around 90, 91 in San Diego. And so they might have been the gateway, so to speak, to the Beltway. It's possible.
But what would cause things if she was protected by these organizations? What changed?
I think because the postal inspector noticed her, and then she just became a liability.
Really, because it's been my experience that the postal inspectors, they don't get involved until you can report all day long to postal inspectors, and they don't do damn nothing, and they don't get involved until the local police are trying to elevate a case to the federal level, and then they bring in wire fraud and postal inspectors. I've never seen it the other way around.
Yeah.
So how do you come to that conclusion?
I think they popped one of her girls in the Beltway, and they turned confidential informant on her. Basically, turned her in. But then the postal inspectors that started on the case in 2001, they just kind of got put on hold over and over again within the bureaucracy. So the investigation didn't move forward for a long time, and then it became active again for some reason in, I think, 2005, 2006. And why it became active again, I'm not sure. I really don't know. It is possible that there were some events that I'm unaware of or I cannot corroborate. Some of them may have to do with the War on Terror. And when I brought up to her that the War on Terror was probably connected to why she was being harassed, she lit up, actually. So.
Lit up, but that she was happy that you brought that up, and she acknowledged your...
Yeah, that I had hit on a basic truth of the case.
And this was a face-to-face meeting?
No. I only spoke to her on the phone and through the internet. I kind of came to the realization that it would cost less that way for her to lie to me. So I wasn't going to go out and just see her and, body language and all that. I mean, But I felt because she was guilty, she was going to lie to me.
Now, Matt Janovich, wouldn't Sibley have his own paralegals he would want to use? Like, why did they reach out to you, do you think? With more experience, too.
I don't know. That's the thing that I haven't. I guess I must have been nailing stuff better than I even knew. That's all I can say. And what precisely some of that would be, I don't know. But yeah, I guess because I was one of I think they were heading in the direction of the honeypot theory. But once I started talking about it, and then it seemed like they felt things were kind of coming together.
And your role in this mainly, if I'm not confused, is you went through the phone records and I guess you were doing reverse searches on each number?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now,
I did that for a few weeks.
How many numbers do you think you went through?
Oh, boy.
I might have a job for you. Okay.
Probably, I don't know, probably about 600 maybe.
Gotcha.
Something like that.
And do you remember what
there was a lot of...
Go ahead.
There was a lot of sifting.
Yeah. Do you remember which database service you were using at the time?
None. I mean, I got sent a CD-ROM with the files on spreadsheets, and we kind of had to make our own spreadsheets through sifting the stuff of, okay, well, this has got a red flag on it that this could be, say, government contractors. We found a lot of government contractors, all of the big names almost, including Qualcomm and Lockheed, and there were a number of them. Sibley released those a few years ago.
Yeah, that's probably the ones that I have, but you have in your possession more.
Yeah, they were all much deeper. Yeah.
So then, are you concerned, since they went after Palfrey and look at her, how she wound up, are you concerned about, or have you been concerned about your own safety or repercussions for you being in possession of this material?
No, I haven't had any real problems. I'm fairly good at telling when somebody's tailing me, or if there has been some odd stuff with my internet and my phones but that's of course died down over the years. During that period, definitely there was some surveillance. That was probably the U.S. attorneys who were after her, which in itself is kind of a problem. But it was always an open case.
Yeah. Now, what else happened during the trial or during the litigation that you want to tell us about, some behind-the-scenes information that maybe we haven't heard before?
I got to read the trial transcript, and there were some very serious procedural errors that went on during the trial that the judge just covered for. The U.S. attorneys were really, really sloppy in their presentation, and sometimes were arguing things that were not very rational for their purpose of convicting her. A lot of strange things like that. Them just not following normal procedure, almost as though they didn't know what it was in court.
Well, can you give us an example?
Oh, gosh, offhand, things, inadmissible evidence. And
right.
Off of the top of my head, it was just really, I couldn't believe some of this stuff. They could have had a mistrial, or she would have had incredibly good grounds for appeal.
For an appeal, right. It's been my experience that sometimes when the fix is in, you know what I mean? The prosecutor is just, they're just doing whatever they want. They're getting away with everything they want. But when there's a fix in, they'll throw in some stuff, reversible errors that you can appeal on and win. They're not going to throw the whole case the first time around, but they'll throw in some errors that you can get away with it. What do you think? Anything like that may be happening?
Yeah. I mean, the judge was practically carrying them.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just constantly, okay, that's not going in the record, and this isn't, and it was a real mess. I mean, they had her. It should have been easy. Sometimes I don't really understand what the hell was wrong with them. It was strange.
Well, they probably had to tread lightly because she was in possession of damaging information.
Sure, and she tried to bring it up during the trial, and the judge kept ruling that it was inadmissible, that it was, and to some extent he wasn't wrong. It had nothing to do with the facts of the wire fraud charges and what they had on wiretaps, and that she was laundering money like she had in 1990. I still can't wrap my head around why you would do it the same way, but she did. So
that's how you get caught. If you were smart and and you weren't messing up, then you wouldn't get caught. But that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what about? Do you think she was like making her own videos or having her own blackmail side business or anything like that, compromising people, selling information?
No, I don't think she cared about that very much. I just think she felt she was making good enough money running the girls with as little effort as possible from her house in San Diego, and that she just didn't really care about anything quite like that. I mean, there's an implied blackmail of blowing the whistle on all these clients.
Yeah.
There were a number of prominent ones here and there, but and I mean, they weren't, at the time at least, they were not nobody. So, do I think the Bush administration intervened in the case? I don't think so. I think they already have a good system of cleaning up people's messes there.
And what about Sibley? Seemed to hint around a lot about Obama, that somehow this would affect the Obama election. Do you have any information on what he was hinting around about?
No, but I got approached by people who were clearly aligned with the Democratic Party who were kind of sniffing around like that and wanting to buy my copies of the phone records, which I wasn't going to do for all kinds of obvious reasons. And, I've had all kinds of people ask me, not anymore because I think they're so old now, but
I plan on asking you.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think all the information is so old, it probably doesn't matter anymore. Maybe with some things, but. Yeah.
What kind of numbers were the Democrats offering you?
Oh, no, they never said anything. We never got that far because they were argumentative, and I was just like, well, shove off.
Gotcha. And what about the Republicans? They didn't come to you and make any approaches towards you?
Yeah, there was some from some conservative people at the time. Really, I think just one guy, but I cannot remember his name anymore. He was somebody who was kicked off of Twitter early on for having opinions opposite to the mob on there. So,
Roger Stone?
Yeah.
Roger Stone?
Huh?
Roger Stone?
No.
Okay. Now, what about Sibley?
Yeah,
do you think Sibley was approached by these same people and offered?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, but I would think he probably said no as well. There's just really not a lot to be gained from it, and like I said, there's sensitive information there of private citizens who had nothing to do with any of it. So
right.
It would have to be redacted, and it's a big job, really big job. The Maddow, the journalist that Maddow sent out, she looked at some of it, and for a little while, but she was looking for Trump.
Exclusively.
Yeah, exclusively. Yeah.
And then what makes you think that those New York numbers were associated to Trump?
Oh, there were a bunch of different guesses, but I think even Palfrey said something about that. But that they were really just guesses. That, like I said, that how many people lived in New York City at the time? A lot. It could have even just as well been bonds traders, for all I know.
What about the name Epstein? That ever cross your desk there?
I don't remember ever hearing his name. I don't remember ever seeing it either. I don't know. I don't think there was any, as far as I know, to my knowledge, going through all the records and my memory of them, I don't remember ever seeing him. And when the story with him broke and all of that, it didn't set off any light bulbs or anything.
Now, we were talking off the air a bit about Jody Williams, Sex Workers Anonymous in Las Vegas, former madam, who has quite a bit of credibility in my eyes. She's done quite a bit of things. She plays up her friendship with Palfrey. Are you aware of any of that? What do you know about that?
I think she was one of several former madams who was talking to her about what to do in the situation she was in, because some of them had gone through similar things, but I don't think she had any special relationship. I highly doubt she talked about anything as sensitive as I did with Palfrey or other people. The most sensitive conversations would have been between her and Sibley. So, she only went so far with me of what she would talk about.
It does seem, though, that they all did know each other. Fleiss and Dennis Hoff and Palfrey, they were all in communication with each other.
That I don't know. She, there were things she wasn't going to talk about, obviously.
And when you describe the sensitive matters that she had discussed with Sibley, can you share any of that with us?
Oh, let's see. Off the top of my head. She seemed to think that Shirlington was connected to one of the girls. That was one thing that she talked about. Like I said, Shirlington might even connect a lot of these things together for all I know. Last I knew, they still existed, too.
Once again, that's Shirlington Limo, which you believe is a front for the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think tipped me off was the guy who was running it was this guy with a rap sheet a mile long. Well, that's a good way to control somebody and have them do what you want, even if it's crazy and highly illegal.
Yeah.
He was well acquainted with breaking the law.
And what was his criminal record? What was his type of crime?
I think there was some violence. Really like garden variety. Good garden variety stuff. Theft, robbery. I think break-ins. I think even business fraud, maybe. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now.
And what led you, Matt Janovich, to look into Shirlington Limo and this fellow with this extensive rap sheet? What sparked your curiosity?
Well, Palfrey. She even asked me to look into some of the reporting. She didn't have time to read everything, so I would give her kind of summarized versions of stuff like that. My take on them, my analysis of its relation to the political climate and atmosphere in D.C. at the time and the war on terror. And she seemed to think there was a connection with the war on terror for sure. But she never really talked about anything like human trafficking or anything like that. Most of the girls were in their 20s, sometimes older, and they were trying to make extra money, basically, to afford to live in the nation's capital.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
In many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and this was 18 years ago or 20, but still it wasn't much better. They were consenting adults. They were meeting at hotels with these prominent men in a lot of cases, but also there were a lot of people who were nobodies. So.
Now, real quick, you mentioned consenting adults. I spoke to a woman named Jessica Collins. Are you familiar with that name?
No.
Yeah, well, she's done a bunch of YouTube videos claiming she's a victim of Epstein, and she knew Jody Williams as well. She came to me, and she claims that she was trafficked by Palfrey, that she was unwilling, and she was had contact with everyone from Prince Andrew to Epstein to who's that guy, John McCain, and then the list started getting bigger and bigger. Her name never came across your desk there, Jessica Collins?
No. There were things that Palfrey wasn't going to talk about with me. They probably would have confirmed my sense that she was, guilty. I saw that the Innocence Project also kind of was working with her a little bit. It's kind of funny how they always pick people who are almost certainly guilty.
Well, their hope is, they overturn it, then they can sue. They get a piece of that lawsuit. Now, what is it about Matt Janovich and your background that they qualified you to even be looking into these things? On such a huge case.
Researcher. Yeah, it was. It was overwhelming.
Yeah.
I honestly felt my brain was melting at times. It was so much information. I had to learn to kind of classify some of it. Look at what was the dross that was unimportant, and so yeah, it was not easy.
But what was your background? Had you ever done this kind of work before?
Yeah, to some extent. I have a bachelor's in American history, and I have a background also in sociology a little bit, and so I've also worked at libraries here and there, and I'm pretty good at research actually and analysis.
Public library, man, has so many resources for people. I would really encourage everybody to get down and get to know your librarian, get down to explore your library. Yeah. It's amazing what they have on those computers to look people up and information on there. You can't get anywhere else. Now, what tools would you use? Like when you're looking into Shirlington Limo and you're looking into this fellow with the rap sheets, how are you looking up his criminal records? How are you looking up the records of Shirlington Limo to find out who owns it? What steps are you taking?
All I had at the time really was what the press was reporting, which they did a pretty good job actually on that case. It was also the late Louise Slaughter, who was a representative in Congress, was trying to draw attention to it at the time. And we could use people like her in Congress again because she was actually pretty good with corruption and uncovering it. And she also was like Gladys Kessler, and she was not a friend of the intelligence community at all.
All right. So you think that the center of this story is intelligence and the war on terror?
Well, it wasn't why I don't think that was the main reason why she was being prosecuted. I just think that was a matter of the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and things in bureaucracy are often compartmentalized. You have the separation of powers right there. So they don't always know what they're doing. The law enforcement machine, it kicks in mindlessly, I guess you could say, into action. And so it caused problems for some people at some point, and it complicated the case a great deal, yes. But yeah, I don't know. I was contacted by various people who've been even, in part of government, even in the Oval Office, who were sending me books to review and things like that. Kind of like giving me the indication that I was possibly headed down the right path.
Specifically, what books?
A young J. Edgar Hoover. I'm blanking on the guy's name right now, but he was in one presidential administration as an advisor at one time, and he's an attorney. I think he's been in Congress as well. But yeah, he sent me one of his books to review, and I was like, well, this is a message, I think. Yeah, that was pretty incredible.
When you were in the midst of all this, did you ever worry that perhaps you were over your head and put a bullseye on yourself? You're looking back. We only realize we're over our heads when we were looking back. At the time, we don't realize.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were trying to swim back to shore.
There were times where I was like, this is possibly not a great idea. And I've got a family. I live on my family's homestead. It was my grandparents' home. and it's a nice life. It's not a bad life at all. I live out in the country. An FOP firing range down the road. That's a little bit of consolation.
So you feel safer with the fraternal order police shooting down the road than not having them there? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. The sheriff goes down there with his deputies as well.
Gotcha.
And he lives close by.
Okay. And you're friends with all these folks?
No, I'm not friends with them. It's just I have cops who live around me and such, and yeah, they're local. I have a general faith in
okay, because that can go two ways. That can work two ways. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I never had any visits. I never had any sit downs. There was one time I thought I might have been tailed, but I don't think that it was. I just think I was heightened awareness or something.
Yeah, of course. But nowadays, especially, a physical tail is really not required. They can track your movements from your cell phone. Yeah, things like that. Those days of, although they do that too. But anyway, what do you make then? Okay, the case is over. She's convicted, right? Now, then she winds up hanging in a shed at her mother's house. I believe it was Clearwater, Florida.
Right.
What do you make of that? Take us back to the day you first heard this. How'd you hear it?
It was actually the day after my 40th birthday, so it was really like
happy birthday.
A 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It was that was something else to turn 40 too. So, yeah, I mean, it was a horrible feeling. I could feel my stomach just kind of fall. I didn't become fearful for myself because I was kind of worried she might do something like that. And she sent me an email after I completed my work with them, I think in the middle of December, and she was saying, Sibley and I, we're not, he's no longer on the case. This would have been like maybe the first week actually of December 2007. And she said that things were said that could not be taken back. And, one major one, particularly in her case, because she threatened to do it in 1990 as well, but she didn't carry through with it, is she threatened to commit suicide if they put her in jail because she couldn't handle it. And so I was worried about her actually quite a bit of the way once I had discovered that, because I looked a little closer into her criminal record in San Diego during the whole thing just to kind of know who I was dealing with. And so, yeah, I mean, do I think there's a big question mark with her death? Sure. Sure there is. I wasn't there. I don't know precisely what happened. It would take a lot, though, I think, to compromise a local police force with something like that when I think all they really had to do was sit back and let her do herself.
And Florida is so corrupt. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that they could they could find the right people to go along with that. There's no doubt in my mind. I live down here in Florida now, so I see how it is firsthand.
Right.
What way do you...
I don't rule it out.
Yeah. So then, what on a scale? Which way do you lean? Suicide or murder?
Suicide or murder? Suicide. Yeah.
Sibley seems to be convinced it wasn't suicide. It was murder. Why do you?
Yeah, he's changed his views on that though, because at first I think he felt that way, but not 100% either. I can't speak for him, and I don't know what he feels about it now. So yeah, that But yeah, I would side on the side of suicide. On the other hand, I wouldn't rule out that there was foul play of some sort. It's not 100% out of the question. It certainly has happened in this country.
Absolutely, and people can be driven to suicide as well. You can be stalked and harassed to the point where and people around you are compromised and manipulating you to the point where
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there people around her that
run to her death?
Yeah. Do you feel there were people around her though that might have been inserted in her life to push her that direction?
Oh boy. I don't know the answer to that question. My co-researcher was from the corporate world. I didn't know her too well. Her name's in the book. I don't want to give it here on the air. So I didn't know her, but she did do things that were strange, that were odd, and she was constantly trying to undermine Sibley when he was actually winning some remarkable victories in court, which I still can't believe he achieved all of those subpoenas. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
So you're saying that you suspect your co-researcher? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I would suspect her. There were, of course, other people. As I said, there were those other madams, former madams, that were advising her. Yeah. I don't know them. I mean, they could be anybody. I can prove who I am. Right. I can prove I've never, ever drawn a paycheck from the federal government, that my life is incredibly boring. And that,
Matt, you seem like you're about the same age as I am. Okay, I'm 63. It'll be 60. My birthday's in September, maybe 64. Who knows? When you get our age, you don't care anymore, right?
I'm 57 years old.
57. I mean, you're still a young guy there. Okay. Now, what is it though? I reach out to you out of the blue. You're not in the spotlight right now. There can be no benefit from you going on the air with me. What motivates you then? If not a plug.
Well, I think people. I mean, I would encourage you to talk to Mr. Sibley if he's willing to.
No, I have. I've interviewed him twice. He'll come back anytime I want him to. What else should I ask him?
That's excellent. I mean, I look at him as a credible witness to the case. I think it was an important case. So I still think there's something there with the war on terror. I still do. And it may be buried history. It may be really explosive. It could be even like a smoking gun with some of the rendition program. Although there have been other smoking guns with it. But it might corroborate other things that we already know about, connect things together, and kind of like a mosaic.
Well, now, what about you? When you're going through these phone records one by one, did you come across any names of people that disappeared? Had been kidnapped and renditioned off to another country and gone? Gonzo?
No, but there was the one guy he was one of the first who had been put in detention, but I'm not very good at remembering Muslim names, so. He popped up. That was strange. There was one that was maybe a murder victim, but I think that was something that would pop up anyway. It didn't appear to be anything weird. It was just the guy was murdered by somebody.
Yeah, but you have a controlled number here of 600 people you're looking through, and one of them happens to be a murder victim. That's kind of a small sample. 1 out of 600 isn't murdered under normal circumstances. Yeah,
it's not a huge sample. No,
right?
No, it's not. I agree. I'll give you a general description of some of the records. There were of course a lot of Beltway plumbers, electricians, construction contractors who were calling her service. There were, of course, like I said, all of these defense contractors, some of them calling straight from their headquarters, which I thought was crazy. But if you don't think anything's going to happen, I guess you would do that.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh, I'm a private investigator. You'd be shocked, about this stuff. You see, people do it from work and from their professional email or their professional phone, cell phone, their work phone. But these trade workers,
sloppy.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But these trade workers, these plumbers and such, do you think maybe they were out there installing wiretaps or hidden cameras or something like that, or just out there just for jollies?
Yeah, they were just
jollies.
They were just out on a lunch break. Yeah, real long lunch break.
And they could afford this? Weren't these high-priced dates?
Some of them were extremely expensive. Yeah, because she had pretty high standards for a lot of these women. But if your money was green, she didn't care. She didn't care who it was. In fact, she didn't want to know. That's why in the book and this is, of course, I could be wrong about this, but I often refer to her as the woman who knew too little. So, but she kind of, and some of it at least, I think she did not want to know.
If you had to give me I guess like a yes or no answer or a quick reaction, was she just someone who was just lazy, doing minimal amount of work, or was she somebody hugely ambitious that was working with the government and working with the gathering intelligence through ruthless ambition?
I think she was a little bit of a mixture of both. I think she was actually suffering from some mental conditions too, to where she was a little bit vegetative, and she was taking Ambien during the proceedings too, and that's also what she took when she hung herself. She had taken it before she hung herself, to keep herself in one piece from flying apart.
Yeah,
because I didn't know how she couldn't.
Yeah. Ambien was a fairly new drug at the time, too, and then we found out that you could take it at night and start sleepwalking. People would get in their cars and drive around and not even know what they were doing, so that's interesting. It's the first I've heard that she was on Ambien. Anything else in the autopsy or medical? That was... Yeah.
There wasn't anything that really drew any attention to it, I mean, I assume only her family could authorize an exhumation if someone felt there was enough information to warrant that. But I don't know. I'm not familiar with the coroner that did it, and I'm just vaguely familiar with the police in Tarpon Springs, and that whole area was a hotbed for spiritualist activity at one time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I think it's
she
one of the
was
oldest
a spiritualist.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, she was a spiritualist. She believed that when people died, or even before, that there's spirits of people floating around, I guess. And which is it's a little odd. It was debunked a long time ago.
We've been talking to Matt Janovich, and the book is Let the Dead Bury the Dead. What made you pick that title?
She said that to me in an email one time. We were talking about the sociologist that had worked for her at one point who had hanged herself, which a lot of prostitutes do. For a variety of reasons. Of course, I'm sure some of them were assassinated. It wouldn't surprise me. Norm Macdonald jokes aside, prostitutes aren't exactly known for being mentally balanced.
Yeah. No, it's a tough life. So, Matt Janovich, anything I haven't asked you, we're about to wrap up here, anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I'd just like to reiterate about the subpoenas that the entire intelligence community of the United States was successfully subpoenaed by Montgomery Blair Sibley, which I don't know of any other case that anyone's ever achieved that. Of course, it was kept out of the press. It's not part of the historical record, and it should be.
Did you get any return from these subpoenas, like documents or anything like that you're in possession of?
Well, yeah, the phone records, deep phone records from the, because we also subpoenaed the telecoms.
Right.
Well, we got 2 of those, and the rest of the intelligence community knew it could drag its feet while the U.S. courts were replacing Gladys Kessler for the case, and so they replaced her with a FISA court judge.
Matt Janovich, thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate this. There's really no motive for you to come back here and talk to us other than you just want the truth out there. You want people to hear what's going on. Let the Dead Bury the Dead is the book. You can get it on Amazon. Matt Janovich, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.